Which one do we start at?
Let me see where we're at. I don't know. I didn't write some of them. Oh, I know where we are. Didn't review this in advance. I think we're up to chapter 9, around Pasuk
9?
chapter 9. Yes, 9. Around 13 or 15.
So far.
Yes, weren't you? You're involved last time.
Oh, no, it's small. No, okay, I don't know what it is.
Oh, we're up to King Yehu. Yehu, Melech Israel. He started out good, but then afterwards he became evil. That's the commentary.
What did he become evil from?
That means he went, he did the Avodah Zarah,
Hey, Bernie.
Hello.
Hey, hi, Tammy.
Hi, Tammy.
Where are you, Tammy?
Here. Here I am.
Okay.
He's here? No.
No, it's
Yeah, we're reading the same book. I was reading the chapter on Clara Barton.
yes.
The author must be in love with her. He just, all the
Oh my God,
superlatives-
gushing.
gushing. But what an amazing story. We all knew her as, oh, she was the first nurse to be involved in
Yeah, Red Cross or whatever. Well, yes, that's pretty interesting.
She was a driven woman.
That Andersonville must have been quite some place.
Yeah. What about the digging of the tunnel? Remember, there was a guy who in life was a engineer, and he had a mining engineer. So he dug a tunnel to get to the Confederate line and put explosives. It reminds me exactly of Gaza. I mean, the same thing.
Yeah.
Same story.
Yeah.
Life is interesting, huh?
I mean, they make Lee out to be I mean, he was a hero for the South. He was a good general, but he lost everything. He lost everything. He had a whole estate with slaves, and came back at nothing.
Why did he lose everything?
Because they lost the war. They took over his estate. The Union took it over as a hospital or something. They took his slaves away. It was like,
What year was that in?
1865. I remember I was in high school then.
Hello.
Bernie was in college already.
The interesting thing is how many mistakes these generals made, totally incompetent or as scared, just political generals, and just
the political ones.
And all these people died, all these soldiers died, gave their lives for these incompetence.
Yeah, incompetence. Yeah, the political appointees especially.
Tov.
You know what I found interesting? In the correspondence that they quote, the writing is beautiful. People spoke so well back then. They seemed like so much more educated than today. A very eloquent writing, and I thought it was very interesting. But they all went to West Point, both the North and the South.
Yeah.
Everybody's a West Point graduate.
Hello, Mario, Ernie. Good evening.
What up?
You went to West Point?
Did you all get a sitter from Art Scroll? Something came in the mail, donated by a family in somebody's memory, but it translates, with Hebrew and English. I don't know if you can see it here.
No.
In a small version, a gift from Art Scroll.
What family donated it?
Which family?
In memory of Reb Moshe Yehuda ben Tzvi Berkowitz, by the Berkowitz and family. But key word is Hashem loves you. It comes with a magnetic strip that you can put somewhere on your refrigerator. Hashem loves you.
So nice,
Right.
Very nice.
She only wants to double.
very nice. What pasuk are we
Okay,
on?
we are in Melachim Beis,
What
Perek Tes,
tet?
Pasuk Yud Aleph.
Tet, pasuk, Yud, Aleph.
So Yehu was given a mission
Oh, yeah.
to go meet with Yonah. Excuse me, Yonah was sent by Elisha to meet with Yehu ben Nimshi and to anoint him as king. And Yonah also told Yehu that the base of Achav and Yeravam ben Nevat and Basha, the family of Yoram, will follow in their footsteps, and Izebel will be, he prophesies that Izebel will be killed. And Yehu was told also to kill the base Yehoram. And there was this whole thing where initially when Yonah came, Yehu was an officer sitting with the other officers, and Yehu was nimshach privately in a private room. The officers didn't know what was going on there. So that's where we are in Pasuk Yud Aleph. V'Yehu yatsa el avdei Adonai. Yehu comes out of that room, and Vayomer lo Shalom. The other officers ask Yehu, "Is everything okay? What did he do with you inside?" Madua ba hamishuga hazeh elecha. What is this meshugana? That's how they called Yonah the Navi. What did he want with you? Vayomer alehem. Yehu responds somewhat derisively. Atem yidatem et ha'ish vetzichel. You know that guy and the way he talks. That's the puzzle. So, why is it that they called Yonah a Meshuga? So, number one, these are Oivdei Abal. All of these officers of Yoram. So, they certainly are going to degrade a holy Navi. So they call them a Meshuga. The Radak says, how you call the Navi Meshuga? This is interesting, that when Nevi'im would fall into a trance, they would act like in a crazy manner, like in a trance, like in an unconscious manner. They sort of lose emotion. They sort of lose control of themselves. So people looking at them might consider them crazy. The Reb Chaim Volozhner, who was the outstanding Talmud of the Gaon of Vilna, the Vilna Gaon. And he's the founder of the first yeshiva, the Volozhner yeshiva, founded in 1802. The second yeshiva in Lithuania was Mir in 1815. So these are the oldest yeshivas that we have that are still in existence. Really, only the Mir. The Volozhner yeshiva has not been in continuous operation. The Nitziv, Rav Natali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin, who was the Rosh Yeshiva of Volozhin, closed the Volozhin yeshiva in 1892 when the Russian government demanded that they teach secular subjects. So the Volozhin yeshiva, even though there have been iterations of the Volozhin yeshiva opened in Israel, it's not the Mir yeshiva has been in continuous function as a yeshiva since 1815. And as you know, they escaped from Lithuania to Shanghai during World War II, and it was a functioning yeshiva during World War II, and it reestablished itself both in Israel and in Jerusalem. Why am I mentioning this? Because the Ruach Chaim Volozhner wrote the Nefesh HaChaim, which is a hashkafic / Kabbalistic work in response to the Sefer the Tanya, written by the first Lubavitcher Rebbe. Of course, the Gra, they were misnagdim. They and he had his outstanding student, Reb Chaim Volozhner, compose a response to the hashkafic ideas promoted in the Tanya, in the Nefesh HaChaim. But Reb Chaim Volozhner also wrote a sefer called Ruach Chaim, which is on Pirkei Avos. He says, "B'chol adam chutz mimoshe Rabbeinu, yesh hefsek umechitza ben aguf l'neshama." In every human being, except for Moshe Rabbeinu, there's a clear division and mechitza between the physical part of our body and our neshama. Uleficha kishid nabim, when they have prophecy, eino bahakitz, it cannot be that they're awake. Ki az gocha geshem shalit alei. The physical, if you're awake, you would not be able to achieve nevuah because your physical body would overcome the neshama. V'hu kechatzitza beino l'nevuah. The physicality of our body would be a chatzitza between the nevuah and the person. Therefore, the Ruach Chaim explains, misnabim rak b'shas sheina. All Nevi'im except for Moshe Rabbeinu would only have prophecy while they slept. Da'az nitbatlu kochot hageshem alav. When you're asleep, your physical body is really not functioning. You're almost in hibernation. Your respiration it drops to a lower rate. Your heart rate's lower. You're obviously not digesting food. Your muscles are not working. Your brain is almost on a it's like neutral. It's not functioning in its normal capacity. It's as if you're in an unconscious state. So therefore, people viewing a Navi might consider them, that's one of the reasons why they're called a Meshuka. Now, Yonah, the Navi that we're talking about, also didn't act in a normal way. He showed up suddenly. He takes Yehu from the group and he brings him into a room, and then he immediately escapes. So that's not normal behavior. So another reason why the Meforshim think that he was referred to as Meshuggah here. And the officers respond to Yehu, "Vayomru sheker, you're not telling us the truth. He's hiding something. Hagen Amalanu. Tell us really what happened." Vayomer kazot v'kazot amar le'lemor, ko amar Hashem mishachticha lemelech le'Yisrael. He reveals to these officers that he has been anointed to be king over Israel. You notice he doesn't include the instructions that Yonah gave him that you're also going to destroy the house of Achav, because they are part of that house, or they're officers for Yehoram. So that he didn't reveal. Pasuk Yud Gimel. Vayimaru, Vayichu ish bigdo. Each took a garment. Vayasimu tachtav el germa malot, and they put it underneath Yehu to elevate him, to show that he's now the Melech. And he's going to sit in a higher location. Vayitke'u b'shofar, they blew shofar. Vayoimru Molach Yehu. They announced Yehu is now the king. Rashi says Ma'alat HaSha'ot, that the Geram HaMa'alot, this is a structure. To me, it sounds like a sundial. It was built in a way that as the sun brings shade on this structure, it tells you what time it is. And they put him there. almost like a throne to show that this is an important place, higher than everybody, because now he's the Melech. The Malbim points out that there's a hashgacha going on here. They all heard that the Navi had mamleched him, and they agreed. They seem not to go against this, what's been going on. Pasuk Yudalet, Vayitkasher Yehu ben Yoshaphat ben Nimshi el Yoram. Yehu begins a conspiracy of revolt with these officers to be in agreement. V'Yoram haya shomer b'Ramot Gilad. Yoram had been injured, if you remember, in the battle against Hazael, who had killed Ben Hadad, who was now the king of Aram. And Yoram was recuperating in Ramot Gilad. Hu v'chol Yisrael, mipnei Hazael melech Aram. So Yehu thinks this is a very good time to strike Yoram. He and all of Yisrael are in one location, in Ramot Gilad. They're occupied with war. And perhaps it wouldn't have been so easy if Yoram was present where they were, that all these officers had gone along with Yehu in this conspiracy. Pasuk Tezvav, Vayoshev Yoram HaMelech l'krapei b'Yisrael. Yoram had left the battlefield and is recuperating in Emek Yisrael. From the wounds that he received from Aram. Bilachamot Chazael Melech Aram. Vayomer Yehu im yesh nafshechem, al yetze palit mana'ir lalechet lagid b'Yisrael. He says that if you want to agree that I should rule, nobody should go to Ramot Gilad to tell what's going on, that I was anointed king. Pasuk Ted Zayin, Vayirkav Yehu vayelech Yisrael. Yehu takes a group with him, and he rides out to Emek Yisrael, where Ki Yoram shochev sham. That's where Yoram was. Not only that, Achazia Melech Yehuda, who had only been ruling for 1 year, remember, who already was a Rasha, we discussed that. Yarad Lirot et Yoram. He was also visiting Yoram the king to be Mevakar Chola. And we'll see, Yehu has a plot, he's going to kill both of the kings. Vat Sofet, in Emek Yisrael, where the king Yoram is, there's a guard who's standing on a tower, Omed al Migdal b'Yisrael, Vayar et Shifat Yehu b'va'o. The lookout sees the company, the troop of Yehu. Vayomer Shifat Aniro, I see a troop, a company of soldiers. Vayomer Yoram instructs the lookout. Kach Rachav Ushlach Likratam Vayomer Shalom. Take a chariot, go out and greet them, and ask them, are they here for peaceful purposes or for war? Vayelech Rochev Asus Likrato. So a lone rider goes out to check out Yehu and his people. Vayomer Kol Melech Hashalom. And he says, this is my king commands me. Are you coming for peace? Vayomer Yehu Malacha Ulashalom Sovelacharei. What are you getting involved in politics for? Whether I come for peace or war? Whether just come and join our group, come behind me. What are you worried about, that there's no peace? Of course there's peace. And you don't have to go back to the king to tell him. And the watchman, who's still watching what's going on from afar, tells Yoram the king, the messenger you sent joined them, and he's not coming back. It's keeping Yoram sort of in the dark. Yutes. Vayishlach Rochev Susheni sends a second writer. Vayavo aleihem vayomer ko amar melech shalom. Here's without the hey. Vayomer yehu malach alo shalom sovalach. Right? Again, he tells him. He saw the writer says there's no danger. The other one, nothing had happened to him. And he changed the language from shalom to ha-shalom just to sort of, he wanted to see if Yehu would get upset because maybe they're suspicious of what's going on. Again, he just has the writer join his group. And the lookout tells the Melech, Pasuk Chav, Vayagerat Sofel Lemor Pa Ad Aleim V'lo Shav. He also has joined them and he's not coming back. V'aminag kiminag Yehu ben Nibshi ki bishigaon yinag. The watchman also says, I see Yehu is following his general custom that he's driving very, very fast. Yehu was known, he was an officer, maybe the chief of staff. He's coming very fast. Vayomer Yoram Esor. So Yoram commands his officers to set up a chariot. He's going to go out himself. Vayasor Richbo. Vayetzei Yoram Melech Yisrael. Va'achazyahu Melech Yehuda. Ish Richbo. Each goes into a chariot. Yoram, the king of Israel. Achazyahu, the king of Yehuda. Vayetzu likrat Yehu. And they go out to Yehu. Vayimtzayu b'chakat Navot HaYisraeli. And they are now in the land of Navot HaYisrael. Who is Navot HaYisrael? Let's remember. Izevel, Navot Yisraeli was a Choshev Yid that didn't want to sell his vineyard to Achav. Izevel, his wife, conspired against Navos, and they made a fake trial, and they end up executing Navos. And if you remember, Eliyahu, the final decree against Achav was because he had murdered an innocent man, Navot HaYisraeli. So lo and behold, the Nakama that's going to come to Beis Achav is going to come in the same field of Navos HaYisraeli. Vayikirot Yoram et Yehu. Yoram sees Yehu, Vayomer Shalom Yehu, and he calls out also peace. Are you coming for peace? He didn't come real close to him. He's in doubt what's going on. And Achazyahu stayed even further. Vayomer Ma Shalom. What peace? Adznune Izevel Imcha Uchshafeh Rabim. I'm coming because of your mother Izevel, who was involved in Znus and all of her witchcraft. There's not going to be peace for you. So, Pasuk Chat Gimel, Vayafoch Yoram Yada Vayanos. Yoram turns around his horses and is now attempting to escape. Vayomer El Achazyahu Mirma Achazyahu. And he says to Achazyahu, this is a trick. The Yehu Milei Yado Bakeshet. Yehu is a warrior. He takes a strong bow and arrow, and he fires a bow and arrow at Yoram. Vayachet Yoram bein zroav. He hits him between the shoulder blades from back. Vayitzeh chetzim libon is the arrow comes right through his heart and comes sticking out. Vayichrab richbon. He dies in his chariot. The Bereshis Rabbah, the Shmos Rabbah, says that Yoram was punished because Hilva Beribis, he loaned money with interest.
The Navi Obadiah.
Right, when he had to provide food for them, they had to. And there's a pasuk in Yechezkel, "Baneshach nasan v'tarbit lakach v'chai lo yichya," which the pasuk seems to relate to your pasuk Chafei. Vayomer el bidkar shalisha. So Yehu tells Bidkar, who is his captain, Sa hashlicheu b'chelkas tenavot Israel. Go get the corpse of Yoram the Melech and throw it into the field of Navos. Ki zechorani va'ata. You and I remember, 8 rochvim tzmadim achrei achav aviv. We were riding behind Achav, Yoram's father, when Eliyahu came and cursed him. Vashem nasalav de. And this nevuah is going to take place. Eliyahu prophesies on Achav that eventually he was going to be killed, and because of the sin of Navos. And the nevuah will be fulfilled through us. We saw the sin of Achav. We also saw the din that Eliyahu declared about him. So we have to take the din from potentiality to an actuality. So don't be fearful and do it. The Malbim says there was a hashgachaim, that both of them were edim at the nevuah of Eliyahu, and they're the ones that are going to carry it out. Chavav, it describes it, reminds us of what was the nevuah. Im lo et demei navot vet bnei banav. Achav had killed and is responsible for the blood of Navos and his children. Ra'isi emesh num Hashem b'shilamti l'cha b'chel kazot num Hashem. And Hashem is repaying back in the Kama. Be'ata you bidkar sash licho b'chelket for Hashem. You take his corpse and dump it there. The Radak brings a machlokes in the Gemara Sanhedrin Mem Chasom and Beis. Yeshu Amrin Banav Ner Guimo. Some say that when Navos was killed, his children were killed too. Others say that it's not. His sons weren't killed. He was executed by Bezdin, but therefore any future children that would come out from him, that's what it means here. Banav Ner Rogu. Pasuk Chavzai. V'Achazyahu Melech Yehuda Ra'ah. Now, Achazyahu Melech Yehuda is seeing all of this. Vayanas derech Beit Hagan. He escapes through a garden. Vayirdof acharav Yehu. Yehu runs after him. Vayomer gam oto hakul amarkava. We should strike him on his chariot as well. B'male gur asher et yivlam. In the heights of Gur. Vayanas Megido Vayamacha. He was struck and he died there. He's also, remember, he's a mechutin of Achav. He's worshiping Avodah Zarah like him. Now we're not given the whole story here. There's a more detailed story in Divrei Yomim that he was hiding in Shomron, and then they brought him to Yehu and he killed him. So the Radak explains these two different stories that are given in Melachim and in Divrei Yomim the following way. First, Achazyahu ran away from Israel, and Yehu from where they were in Israel, and Yehu runs after him. And Yehu strikes him and injures him in Male Gur. After Achazyahu is injured, he runs away, Achazyahu, to Megiddo. And then he became he had a stroke. He was mute, but not dead. So his servants took him to hide in Shomron. And then Yehu was found in Shomron, was brought to Yehu, and Yehu killed him there in Israel. Rashi has a little different shot, but you can see that's how they try to reconcile the two stories that are given in Divrei Yomim and in Melachim. Pasuk Kafches. Vayarkivu oso avadav Yerushalayma. Achazyahu, whose capital city is in Jerusalem, was taken back by his servants to Yerushalayim. Vayikberu oto bikvurato im avotav be'ir David. He was buried next to his forefathers, the Davidic kings. Now remember, by Yehoram, his burial was different. Remember, they didn't burn the regular burnings that they do, and he was not buried with the other kings. Here it doesn't say this by Achaziah, so it looks like he received the regular covet given to a king who dies. And they made a sreifa for him, and they buried him in the royal tomb. And the question is why? He was also a Rasha. So one say his father Yoram was treated worse because he at least grew up in the house of Yehoshaphat, who was a tzaddik, and then went bad. So that's why he was denied all the honors. But Achaziyahu already was grown up in a bad house. Or he didn't live, he was only king for 1 year. So he was not involved in such rishas for very long. And that's perhaps why he was deserving to a better kavura than his father Yehoram. We're given a final summary, Chavtes, Uvishnas 11 shana leYoram ben Achav, Malach Achaziyahu Yudah. That you should know that Achaziyahu was king in the 11th year of Yoram ben Achav's rule. We want to remind that he had a very short reign. And it wasn't just because he married into the house of Achav, but also he did bad maisim himself, like we described. Pasuk Lamed. Vayavo Yehu Yisraela. Yehu was not finished with the Nakama. The Izevel Shama. So Izevel, right, the wife of Achav, the mother of Yehoram, here's what has happened. You know what? She gets dressed up. She puts makeup on. She puts mascara on. She puts a nice sheitel on. She wants to find favor in the eyes of Yehu. Maybe to marry her, says Rashi, or certainly not, and to avoid being killed. They're very common that when there was a rebellion against the king, the person doing the rebellion would marry the wives of the previous kings. It would solidify their attempt to take control. Izevel knew Yehu, he was the Sartzava of the army. So she thought she might have a chance. Yehu Babashar. Yehu comes in through the gate. Vatomra Shalom. And Izevel says, do you want peace? Zimri Horeg Adonav. If you remember Melachim Aleph, Perek Tet Zayin, Zimri killed Ela ben Basha. So Izevel is hinting to Yehu, it's not that problematic that somebody kills a king. We have other cases where somebody killed a king. She wants to minimize sort of the guilt or how bad this was This is the way of the world. She's trying to get on his good side. Others, the Kilas Yaakov learned pshat that no, she's giving him a shtoch. Later on, Zimri was killed after he killed that king. So she's giving a remez to you that the same thing's going to happen to you. Vayisa panav el hachalon. So Yehu looks at the window. Vayomer mi iti mi. And he turns to his officers and says, "Who is with me?" And 2 or 3 of his officers look to him. Some say the word saris here sometimes means officer, but a saris in normal Hebrew means somebody who's been castrated. And it was very common for males who were assigned to work in a harem or to work with queens had to undergo this type of surgical procedure to take away any possibility that there would be immorality with the royal wives. That's one of the reasons the Minchas Chinuch says we have an isser of lo yavo p'sua daka b'kal Hashem. We have certain halachos, I've written a sefer on it called Kal Hashem, about if the genitalia is damaged in a certain way, you can't give them chuppah v'kiddushin. They cannot marry a Jewish woman. The Sefer HaChinuch, which goes into sometimes the background of why. So this is such an immoral act because, first of all, you should know that in the 1500s, 1600s, when opera in Europe became that's when it started. So to have a high voice was very sought after. So young boys, before they underwent puberty, would undergo voluntary castration. They were called castrati. So that when they went through puberty, their larynx would not thicken and they would remain with very high voices throughout their lives. And there were parts written by Mozart and by the great Haydn, the great composers, you'll see, for castrati. Means a certain part was written specifically with such a high register, only the castrati would be able to sing that. But the Sefer Chinuch doesn't talk about it. He talks about, and the castrati were paid enormous sums of money. It was like being a rock star. Question, who would do this? Well, there were benefits to it. You made a lot of money, you were famous. The same thing drove people to want to serve as srisim in the house of the king. They were close to power, they were famous, they were given money. And it's so to show how despicable such a thing is, there was a law in the Torah, lo yavo p'sua daka b'kal Hashem. Pasuk Lamed. Vayomer shimtua. Yehu gave a command, throw her out the window. There's an English word for it called defenestration. In 1618, there was a 30 years war. There's a famous 30 years war that the battle in Europe were between the Catholics and the Protestants. And it was a terror. They say 1/3, as much as 1/3 of the men of a certain age during those 30 years were killed. So in 1648, at the end of the 30 Years' War, something called the Peace of Westphalia was signed. And the people at that time, the secular leaders realized how crazy these religious wars were. So the beginning of secularism, it's not by accident that at that time, 1650, you have Thomas Hobbes writing Leviathan, And you have John Locke writing about one of the three. We have the pursuit of we say that with happiness, but life, liberty. So life, we have in our Constitution, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But then it was life, liberty, and like the right to own land or something like that. But why do I mention these things? That this all happened, that it was transfer of power from the religious and from the kings to parliaments and governments. And modernity is dated at the
Come,
end.
let's go for a walk.
Modernity is dated,
Hey.
at least governmentally, we start having more civil society. We don't have
You
kings,
don't want to go for a walk?
etc. At this time. Now, so what do I say here? In
I
1618,
got it.
one of the kings were thrown out of a window in Prague. That's called the defenestration. Fenêtre in French is window. So the word defenestration means throwing somebody out of a window. It happened again in 1948 during the Czech, when the Czechoslovakia, it was in question, were they going to stay in the Soviet Union or not? Somebody was also thrown out of a window. So they had a defenestration. Well, here is the first defenestration. Izebel is thrown out of the window. By Yazmi Dama Lakir, her blood spilled on the wall. Vela Susim Vayermesena, and the horses trampled her. Vayavo Vayocha Vayesh. Listen to this. Yehu now has a celebration. There's a great simcha because of the downfall of Rishoyim. That became a big question this week when the pagers blew up in Lebanon. There were all these videos about yeshiva bachrim dancing, and they were making parties. And the question was this appropriate or not? Well, you see here, Yehu made a simcha because Rishoyim fell. He was able to kill Yehoram and Achazyahu and Izebel. So the Gemara in Sanhedrin, Lamed Tesom and Beis, after Achav died, it said, Vayavor harina b'machaneh. Omer Rav Acha bar Chanina, uvavod Rishoim rina. You're allowed to be happy when the Rishoim fall. We're talking about Bavod Acha ben Omi rina. Now, Vayomer pikduna et arura azot v'kivrua. Pick up this cursed one, this Izebel, and bury her. He vat melachim. You know what? She is from royalty. And there was already Eliyahu Navi had prophesied, Haklavim yochlu et as Izebel b'chel Yisrael, that the dogs would eat her. So how could Yehu command to be buried? So we said that she was partially eaten. So it's enough if she was, but it doesn't have to be completely eaten. Some of her was eaten and then she was buried. The Radak asks, she was the boss of a Goyish king. She wasn't even Jewish. So do we really have to treat her b'kavod because she's the daughter of somebody else? Then other ask, why do they have to give a reason? There's a mitzvah to bury every Jew. You're not allowed to leave a Jew unburied overnight. So there is a machlokas rishon, whether Izebel converted to Judaism before she married Achav. If she did convert, and she was Jewish, so we have a problem. How could she, why did they have to give a reason? Oh, she's a bas melech. Every Jew has to be buried. Now, even if she did not convert, you have a chiyuv to bury a non-Jew as well. Now, There is a machlokes, which we learned in Shmuel Beis, whether the chiyuv to bury a non-Jew is min Torah or rak midrabanan because of darkei shalom. But even if it's midrabanan, and you're going to say this takana that you have to bury even goyim, so we have the question again: why was that reason given? So remember, Yehu now has the status of a melech, and he can, for governmental reasons, choose not to bury the people he killed. Because otherwise, why would the pasuk have to give a reason? Oh, he buried her because she was a bas melech. Must be that otherwise he would have had the right not to bury her. Because it's one of the dinim given to a king. Just like we learned, a king can kill somebody even without Sanhedrin. Now, the tour in Yoredeya, in the name of the Rishon or Zeruah, says, Asr lisasek b'kfuras adam sheyadua shehu rasha v'lo asa tshuva. You can't participate in the burial of a person that you know was a rasha and he didn't do tshuva. He brings from the Avel Rabasi a medrash, the haparish midarkei tzibur and misaskim imolachol dover. You can't be misasik even with his funeral. He brings Asr lasok b'kfura misha mochar treifos b'cheska shem kashrus. If you have a butcher who sold treif meat as if they were kosher, you can't participate in his burial. If he died before he did tshuva. So Izevel certainly didn't do tshuva. Maybe it's an isser to participate in her kvura because she's a Rasha. So again, we have to be given a reason that she was a bas melech. The Bach doesn't agree with the tour and with the Or Zeruah. And he says you have a din to cover everybody, including Rishoy. So when it says Haparish midarkei tzibur misaski malachol dover, it means you don't do shiva, you don't do tanchumei avelus, but you do bury them. Pasuk Lamed Hey. Vayalchula kavra. They went to bury her. And when they went to bury her, lo matzu ba kiyam gulgolas v'araglayim v'kapos yadayim. They found her skull, her feet, and her palms. That was all that was left because the dogs had eaten the rest of her. And of course, the Medrash sees Ramazim in what we were told was left. It says in Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer, Gemilus chasodim lavelim minayin anu lamedim. The fact that you're supposed to do Gemilas Chesed to people who are mourners, where do we learn it? Mizevel. Shaya Beisa Samach Lashuk. Her house was near the market. Kol chatan shaya over ayta yotze mi beito mitzaltzeh b'chapea umekalsez b'piyum achelet asr tzaados. First of all, she would give gifts to chasanim. V'chol mei shaya over b'shuk ayta yotze mi beita umechapeh b'kapea umekorneh b'piyah. She would sing kinos with her mouth, and she would give gifts with her palms. So the Medrash says, "Ayivarim shayigam chesed lo shaltu l'maklavim." The dogs didn't eat the parts of her body that she did milos chesed with. And the fact that only her head, her feet, and her hands were buried, this fulfilled the divrei of Eliyahu Navi where he said, "Ein kover," she won't be buried, because not all of her was buried. The Tosfos Yontif gives us the halacha that there's a chiyuv kvura even if there's only a kazayas left of a mace. There's still, and the Noda B'Yehuda brings the same thing, that even if you have a kazayas, it still is a mitzvah of kvura. The other Rishonim say kazayas is not enough. You need the head and the majority of the body. Pasuk Lamed Vav. Vayashuva vayagidu lo. They returned, they told Yehu what had happened. Vayomer dvar Shemu. This fulfills the word of God. Asher diber biyad avdo Eliyahu Tishbi lemor. This is what Eliyahu Tishbi said. Bechelik Israel, in the area of Israel where Navos were Izebel participated in the execution of an innocent man. Yochlu klavim es psar Izebel. Eliyahu had said the dogs are going to consume the flesh of Izebel. V'aita, and the last pasuk, v'aita nivlat Izebel kedomin al pnei hatzedek b'chelik Israel. Her body will be like a rock. B'chelik Israel asher lo yimru zat Izebel, and they won't be able to say this is Izebel. We won't be able to recognize her. She's going to be like fertilizer that is spread throughout the ground. We wouldn't be able to say that's Izebel because most of her body was eaten by dogs, including her face. Say the Meforshim. And so concludes the Nakaba against the house of Achav, all the way down to Yoram, and including the evil Jezebel. It will continue in next week's parak, the Nakaba.
I got a question.
Yes, yes.
A few. Maybe I missed it last week. Why was he chosen to be the one to do all this gory stuff to the house of Achav? Make you bloodthirsty too.
You know, I don't think that we went into what was this? Why was Yehu ben Nimsha picked?
Right. Wasn't he afraid? You're always talking about Nida. Nida. How does he know that somebody's not going to come after him?
Oh, so it says, we learned in Sanhedrin, he was from Shevet Menashe, and he was a tzaddik. He was a great tzaddik.
But if you spill so much blood, you won't be a tzaddik anymore.
You'll see in the end he turns as well.
And then the other thing is you talk about what wasn't Hashem upset when the Egyptians drowned in the sea? I mean, they're still his creation.
No, but angels say,
You're going on, Esther, you're talking about the issue of, are we allowed to celebrate? So
Right.
there in a Chanami, it says, Masai Yadai Tovim Bayam Vatem Omrim Shira. In fact, that's why we don't say Hallel. We only say Hallel on Pesach, the first day of Pesach. The rest of Pesach, we don't say Hallel because of the issue, the Shiras, the Yad happened on the seventh day. And it's not appropriate for us to say Hallel during the period of time and then it says in Pasuk, Bin foloi vecha al tismach. It's a Pasuk in Mishlei. When your enemy falls, don't be happy. So, yes, go ahead, Walter.
No, you don't say a full halal, but you still say, you don't say a full halal.
Chatzi but there's because of what Esti said.
Right, I understand.
Yodai tovim bayavatem mushira. And then they also said, halali of the avodah zara, halali of the avodah zara. Right? It means what benefit did they have? Anyways, I think there are opinions on both sides that it may not be that appropriate to show glee, at the downfall of your enemies. But I think for Jewish people, it was a natural thing that they felt after a year and finally some good news.
Right.
They couldn't really hide their emotions. Probably example of that.
Yeah. Talking about throwing out